Well, hello and welcome. Let me make myself bigger there. I don't know what happened. My name is Guy Stevens, and this is the Alliance Against Seclusion and Restraint live series, our podcast series that we do every other week. We're excited to have you here with us today. If you're not familiar with who we are and what we do, the Alliance Against Seclusion and Restraint was formed about 6.5, going on 7 years ago. Started through a personal journey. I was on a journey with my son who had experienced physical restraint and seclusion in a school, and ultimately began to take steps to try to stop these things from happening, not only in our school, but across the country. Started the Alliance really to look at punitive and exclusionary discipline, things that were often being done to kids in the name of behavior, and trying to change policies, practices, laws, anything that we could to make a positive difference. So you have gotten here with us today, and we're excited to have you here. One of the things that I really enjoy about doing the podcast is getting to talk to people that I just think so highly of, and people that I've had the opportunity to collaborate with. And today is no exception. I've got my friend and ally in this work, Cheryl Poe, who will be joining us here in a moment. We'll be telling you more about Cheryl's work and the things that she's been doing and having a lot of impact with. Before we do, just a couple of quick announcements. First of all, I want to just share with you that, we're getting to the time of year where it's, we're November, and, the leaves are falling here in Maryland, and it's cold. And, it has me realizing that, Thanksgiving here in the U.S. is just a few weeks off, and Giving Tuesday. And it's a good opportunity to kind of reflect on things that are important to you. And just want to encourage you, as you're kind of thinking about that, there are ways to support our work. We are a very small nonprofit, and we really rely on donations and support from people across our community. And one of the things that we offer is an option to join the Alliance. And when you join the Alliance, you become a monthly donor. It starts at around $5 a month. And as a monthly donor, there's certain benefits that you get. In fact, I've been sending people out nice little packets when they join. But that membership, that helps us. That helps us to do the work that we're doing, to try to influence changes in laws and policies, to work with schools. So I just wanted to, ask you, take a look at our website. You can learn more about who we are and what we do. But consider supporting the work as well, because it's important, and it's important to have people that are helping us to do these things that we're trying to do and make change. So with that, just one quick other thing before we bring up our guest, which is really why you're here today. Just want to remind you, if you are watching us live, it's always such a fun thing to see who's on here with us live. I know we have certain people that seem to be here week after week as we're doing the podcast. So let us know in the chat. If you're on a platform that allows you to put comments in, you can do it on Facebook, you can do it on YouTube. Put in the comments who you are and where you're from. And it's always exciting to see kind of our returning friends, new faces as well. And, just take a moment, if you would, and let us know in the chat who you are and where you're from. So with that, let's get to why we're here today. I'm going to go ahead and bring up my guest here, Cheryl Poe. And Cheryl, I'm going to read a bio, and then as I told you, I'm probably going to ad lib a little bit here as well. But I'm going to start out with the formal part. You are the founder and executive director of Advocating for Kids, a special education advocacy organization that provides resources, information, workshops to parents, professionals, with a special focus on addressing the needs of Black and Brown children with disabilities. You are kind of past board president for the National Allies for Parents in Special Education, which is a national parent-driven organization that works hard to increase access and quality advocacy resources for special education families from underserved populations to improve educational outcomes. Really important work. You hold a Master's of Art degree in Urban Education and Counseling. You've completed over 15 credit hours of postgraduate hours in psychology. In June of 2004, you completed the Nation Group Psychotherapy Institute at the Washington School of Psychiatry. I can't talk today. In Washington D.C, psychiatry in Washington D.C, in the study of group psychotherapy. You've also completed a 2-year term as the Student Outreach and Recruitment there, and that's not even really scratching the surface, because there's so much that you do. I'm going to add some important things onto your intro here. Important to me is you've been a friend and ally for many years. We were talking about this as we were getting started here. And I think when the story of my son came out, you invited me to join you on your podcast. And I think that was one of the first podcasts that I was on, kind of just sharing my story as a parent. And we later had a chance to meet in person. And you were volunteering with Alliance for quite a while as well, and the work that you have been doing throughout your career is so important and so impactful. The individual, because I happen to have been connected to a lot of people over the years that have worked with you, that have, and sometimes it's me like, hey, Cheryl, I've got somebody that I'm going to encourage to reach out to you. But I mean, you're somebody that has not only helped individual families, but you have brought about things that have changed school systems. You have done work that has created communities of support that never existed before.
Wow.
All that you have in your bio is fantastic, but I think about, you just finished a conference here recently. I think about all of the work that you're doing and the reach that it has, and it really has been impactful. So it has been a pleasure to know you over these years, and I'm always excited to have you back. So thank you so much for joining us here today.
Oh my gosh, thank you for such a kind and heartfelt introduction about the work that I have done and how we know each other. It's like amazing that I was your first person to interview you about your story, because what they did to Cooper was not appropriate. It was not good.
and Cooper remains a big fan. He sees you and gets excited. So,
we'll tell him
he doesn't remember everybody I've talked to, but he knows you.
But it is, and to see where you are now, it is just great that you've been able to make sure that you were able to learn from and grow and develop something that's helping, again, thousands and thousands, tens of thousands of families and children. And I'm just glad to be here. I like to come at least once a year.
Absolutely. And we love having you and learning about what you're doing. And of course, there's a tremendous intersection, with the work that you do and the work that we're doing here at the Alliance. And of course, although, from kind of where we started, it was very much focused on restraint seclusion. And it's more than that we really do today. It's, yes, it's restraint seclusion, but it's suspension, expulsion, corporal punishment. It's, all the things that end up being done to kids in the name of behavior. And of course, what we know about all of that data, you look at even just starting at restraint seclusion, who is going to be restrained and secluded more frequently, of course, children with disabilities, but, Black and brown children with disabilities, at the top. And your work has always been very focused on Black neurodivergent children and helping their families as well. And that was part of what I wanted to talk to you about today, but I really just want to have a conversation and talk about some of the other exciting things that you've been doing and some of the work that some of our other friends are doing as well. So let me just start off by just sharing a couple of hellos here in the chat. And again, if you are on live, let us know who you are and where you're from. And Stacy here joining us. And Stacy, I don't know where you are today, but I'm guessing, well, I'm not going to guess. But Stacy, it's good to have you here. We've got Cassie here from NSAR, Michigan and New Jersey. Good to have you here as well. Andy here in St. Paul, Minnesota. We've got Jean from New Jersey. Here from New England somewhere. I'm trying to remember, Massachusetts, I think. And hello. Okay. Thank you so much for joining us, and always great to have you. Got Nicole here from New Jersey as well, and we've got Australia represented. Thank you so much. I always joke around with people that we have people from all over the country and world that tend to jump on these, and that's the point. Somebody from Georgia here checking in as well. So great to have you here. And if you're somebody that's joining us today, maybe you heard Cheryl talking about joining us and you have been part of the advocating for kids community, but maybe not from over the, say hello too. We're happy to have you here and happy to have you joining us. Yes. So all that, why don't we kind of jump in? And there are a couple things I wanted to touch on with you. And of course, I want to hear about some of the things that you're working on now. But one of the reasons that I had suggested we talk again is, I was seeing a lot of the work that you were doing. And we all, of course, are, looking at this body of work that we have and trying to advocate for kids and for families, but over time you kind of evolve how you're approaching it and how you're trying to make people aware. And I began to see a lot of work that you were doing around kind of advocating for Black neurodivergent children. And, here at the Alliance, of course, a focus is neurodivergence. And, that goes along with all of the things that we see being done. But I wanted to talk to you kind of about that focus and about, not only, why you have that focus, why it's important. So let me let you just talk for a minute and tell us, kind of why that's a big part of what you're doing.
Right. There's several reasons around that. I'm Black, right? The obvious. And my kids, my sons, are children with disabilities. Even though they are mixed race, my husband is not Black. The world experiences them as Black men. And with that being a reality, they have an intersectionality that I don't find any other large organization or special education advocacy organization tackle. And that's the intersectionality of racism and ableism. And when I reflect and learned more about what that was, what that felt like, and then even myself, how often I probably experienced it and didn't realize it, I realized because I was in spaces, a lot of spaces, white spaces, predominantly white spaces, where there was not room or representation there for me to explore that. So as I started really looking at the needs and the data, and I've always been aware of the data, like how Black kids always, whether they have disabilities or not, are represented high in anything negative, like suspension, exclusion, not graduating, not going to college, not being a part of twice exceptional labels to get access to gifted services. We are always, our kids since the beginning of integration have always been represented in a negative piece. And I realized that people love to study that. Like, I think all of my life up until that, all those other things that I list on my resume that I probably, or my bio, I probably should update, all kind of led to the idea that, yes, we know this, everybody's studying this, people are talking about this, but nobody's doing anything about it. And in my opinion, when the rubber had to meet the road, right, to get things done for a population who everyone will acknowledge is being harmed when we look at civil rights in our public schools, but no one's really doing anything about it. And you can't be too loud about it either, because, especially being in Virginia, you're then labeled as being, a racist the other way. Or I literally had an attorney, a Virginia attorney who represents parents, accused me of being racist because I focus on the intersectionality of Black and ableism. And I'm like, as a Black person, I really don't have the authority or the power to be racist. I said, especially when it comes to Virginia special ed. I mean, you're aware that they just did a youth commission on special education in Virginia. And on that committee, they didn't have anybody Black. And it was sanctioned by the state, sanctioned by the General Assembly. Money was poured into that survey research. Not one Black person was part of that commission to discuss what our needs are. And I brought that up. And after that, of course, they went and they found, I think, 4 Black people that they got to join, but they had already developed the survey. The survey had already went out to the community. They had already collected the data from the survey before they even added a Black individual on that committee to discuss the needs of families trying to access dispute resolution in the state of Virginia. So that really annoyed me. And one of the things, Guy, I've learned when people really upset me, I get really mad, I've learned to use that energy in a way to be like, oh, okay, so you don't want us? We'll do our own.
Right. No, I've seen that. I mean, you more than anybody I could think of. I mean, and I relate to that a bit as well. It's like that becomes fuel. But constructive fuel, right? I mean, it's not just that, oh, I'm angry and but it's like, okay, well then there's another way. Yeah,
there's another way.
Right.
I'm not going to let go of this just because you don't want me to do it.
Right.
So I was introduced to Dr. Kathleen Wiley. She's an associate professor for research and educational leadership at Howard University, through some federal programs that I'm a part of. And we just started talking. I was complaining one day about Virginia not doing anything. Yay, Virginia in the house. Hey, Monica. And I lost my train of thought. Sorry. Oh, and then she was like, well, let me look at some stuff. So she did like a primary research about a year and a half ago, where she was looking at all the research, all the data about the outcomes for students, Black neurodivergent students in Virginia and students students receiving disabilities overall. She's like, oh my God, this is horrible. So we were able to partner together, get some grant money. And she and her research team did about a year-long research of interviewing parents and across just in Virginia, from across the eastern side, I will say from all the way up in the northern area, like the Arlington area, all the way down to Chesapeake. And then we had some parents that were Richmond area, but some of those small towns outside of Richmond. So it is concentrated on the East Coast, which is not as rural, because I'm sure the experience in rural Virginia is probably a lot different than it is here in this particular area. And it's just really, 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 really interesting what we're seeing so far. The grad students, the PhD level students are just loving this work. They're actually like able to see how their research is now going to be used to create hopefully change. And Guy, if you don't mind, I can share.
I would love to. Yeah, would love
okay.
to. Yeah.
Let me do that real quick. I got it up. Share my screen. I should be able to.
Yeah, and I think as you're doing that, I mean, I think you were bringing up some really important and interesting points. I mean, one is, I mean. Life is hard and things are crazy right now, but there was a point where you see some positive progress. You see well-intentioned people though sometimes that aren't making the table open to everyone. We look at those ideas like nothing about us without us, but then we find that even in well-intended spaces, the representation of individuals that should be there are not there and not part of the process. And when you can look at a problem and understand like who's being affected by the problem, not having the people that are affected by the problem be part of the problem and the solution is really critical. And it seems like that's always been a big part of the work that you do is getting that. But again, even in very well-intentioned spaces, I mean, you look at the disability community and you think about I know well that there have been things that I found a little surprising in some of those areas, even given where we are and, thinking that, so yeah, I get that for sure. Are you able to share there?
I am. I had it up in one screen, Guy, and then I kind of lost it. So I'm trying to see if I can find where I put it again.
It doesn't look like it's shared on the bottom here. So we'll give that a second to come back, hopefully.
Just give me a second. But you were right. And I do want to give that some attention real quick. I want to talk about the unintended consequences of not knowing, right? It's not that, and that's one of the things that when I made that public comment, because I was going to make public comment about something else, but when I was in that room where the commission was meeting, I made my public comment is like, as a Black woman, I'm disappointed that there's no one that looks like me on this board. And before I could finish, though, their comments were, but we have executive directors that work in urban communities. So to me, that response isn't recognizing that though you may have white women, because the majority of them were, who are executive directors and they do work in a school in a district or in Richmond or Portsmouth, some of our predominantly Black neighborhoods are considered urban, because I'm sure that's what you meant. Then that's not the same as having an individual, right? That either is working in the community, with the community, understands the community, but also from a perspective of a parent of a child with a disability that went to these steps. I'm a parent of a child with a disability. And the idea that their whiteness didn't matter to them because they were working with a population and thinking that they can represent our voices is concerning. And that's not thinking it through. If and people are like, oh, diversity and inclusion is not important, it wasn't working. I disagree, because that's what diversity and equity and inclusion is, thinking about who you're serving.
And some of these things are just facts, right?
Yeah.
I mean, I'm still having a very hard time with this idea of the politicalization of diversity, equity, inclusion, accessibility. Like, this is really concerning to me, because some of these things are just, I mean, they're facts. The facts are, we are diverse, and we like, we have to, we actually published an article recently about diversity, equity, inclusion, accessibility in education, in public health. But I mean, like, people are running away from these things that are like really
Yep.
important things right now, and that concerns me gravely.
It does. And for reasons that I don't even well, in my opinion, it feels like it's false propaganda
It is. It
around
is. Right.
why we don't
Right.
need it. Like, oh, it
Right.
never really worked, or it's
Right.
this, or it's that. Well, no, the reality of it is, no, are we perfect
Right.
in
Right.
America? Heck no. We
Right.
are so far from that. We
Right.
get that.
Right.
However, why are we going backwards? Why are we going backwards
Right.
around that, instead of focusing in on what we know we need to build on?
Yeah.
And then another piece is that inclusion piece. I was talking to a friend who does a parent information center. She works with one of them in
Sure.
Oklahoma.
Yep.
Do you know what their grant, like, this is how bad it is. In their grants, they talk about transition, and they're literally just
Mm.
talking about how kids transition out
Right.
of secondary into whatever independent living. And they literally had to change the language around in their grant guide
Right.
just
Right. Oh,
because.
no, I've seen that as well. I've seen that as well.
Explain that
In
to me.
yeah, no, I wish I could. I mean, I've seen, I mean, yeah, it blows my mind. But I've absolutely seen, like, in any of the inclusion, like, oh, well, suddenly that's a word we can't say anymore. We've got
Yes.
to use another word that
Yes, it makes no sense to me. It
no,
makes no
no,
sense
no,
to me at
no,
all. So what
no.
I'm going to do, because I do have the information for whatever reasons, guy, I don't know. I don't know why. And it's probably because I'm always on the other side where you
Okay, okay,
are.
okay,
So I'm struggling with being able to share the actual PowerPoint, but I
okay.
would like to share some of the information, at least, if that's
Sure, sure,
okay.
sure. Absolutely,
'Cause
absolutely.
I'm hitting the buttons, and I was doing this earlier, right? And I didn't want, and I actually logged myself out. But let me just make sure one more time this is in. I hit present. Can I find it? And it's not. Yeah, it's not showing
Do
up.
you check the middle tab
Oh, here
there?
it is. Yep, I
Okay,
got it.
okay, okay.
Okay. Let me see. Can you guys
All
see
right,
it?
all right. It is there, and I'm adding it, and now everyone can see it. So,
Okay,
yep,
great. All
yep,
right.
yep.
So, guys, I'm just going to share real quick. So, like I said, I've been doing a research project with Howard University, Dr. Catherine Wiley, for about 2 years now. And we were able to we get all the information together with the students, and we're able to present some initial findings, pre-executive summary. And we launched this on October 25th in Norfolk. We had a host, Black Brand, who is like the Black Chamber of Commerce in the Hampton Roads area. They hosted the event for us, gave us a venue. And then we got a grant from Dignities in School that allowed us to provide lunch and some other really neat stuff. So this is like me, Catherine, and these are the students that are doing this project with us. This one is an Old Dominion University student. She's great. She does a lot. Her degree, I think, is in writing. And we have Miss Jones. She is actually works as an educator in DC while
Okay,
getting her PhD. And then we also have another PhD student who is also has a master's in special education administration. So I'm just going to go to some of the initial findings about what the parents, said.
and if you
And-
would, before you get the findings, just
okay.
if you would kind of restate broadly the research question that
Yes.
you're really trying to address here before we get
Yep.
into the findings,
I
just so I
sure
can.
can. So here are some of the research questions. Can you see this? Did it switch for
Yep,
you?
yep, we got it. So, what experiences do?
Okay,
Okay,
yeah.
yep.
Okay. Oops. Sorry about that. I was trying to make it a slideshow, or is this okay?
It's fine if you want to make it a. There
Okay.
you go. It
Yeah.
is.
So
You
yeah.
got it.
So these were the research questions that we started with in trying to understand and how to look at this. And is, what experience do Black parents have navigating the public school special education systems, specifically in Virginia? And then what advocacy strategies do parents use to advocate in these systems? And then the third very big question, and got a lot of feedback on this one, what are the impacts of those systems on Black families?
Okay.
So those are the questions we were trying to identify.
Gotcha. And I'm assuming number 3 kind of gets into the effectiveness or the lack of effectiveness of people are trying to work with the system, right?
Yes,
Okay.
yes. And we'll go over some of the things that we
Okay.
got so far. And this just talks about, I usually let the students do this because this is about the method and the research technology, like the dose and what they mean and how they did that. But all the parents were from Virginia. They were all identified as Black. There were 21 of them, and they were semi-structured interviews. So they met for an hour or so with somebody individually to do this. And then it was analyzed using a deductive and inductive coding aligned with research questions. Yeah, you're going to have the students talk about that more. I can tell you more. I can tell you about some of this stuff.
But the message there is that this is a legitimate study that went through like
Yes,
an
yes.
institutional review board process that has been vetted and is scientifically holds up to So I mean, yeah,
All that
this
good
is
stuff.
yep.
And we're in the process now, just to add to that. So spoke with Catherine, like, so she's writing the whole piece, and now we are submitting it to Dr. Charles Bell. He
Okay.
is going to be one of our peer reviews. Dr. Tanette Powell out of, I want to say, Tennessee, and I found a Virginia, and there is a doctor. I don't know her name, but she's out of Howard. I'm so sorry.
Gotcha.
She's going to be peer review, and I'm trying to get somebody in Norfolk, from Norfolk
Right.
State,
Hmm.
that is local to be part of the peer review, because I think
great.
that's important to have their voice, to see too
Absolutely,
how they're
absolutely.
responding.
And again, to the integrity of what you're doing. I mean, this is going to result in a peer-reviewed, paper, journal paper of some kind that really could have a lot of impact. So tell us about your findings.
So one of the first questions about the advocacy, the parental advocacy strategies used, and this is one of the first ones that parents were just seeking, seeking information to inform their decisions. They felt like, even though, from what I understand, that you get the procedural safeguards, it still wasn't enough for them to understand what was happening in those meetings. So really, a sense of not having the information that they need to make really good decisions about what their student needed.
I can't even think about how many copies I had of the procedural safeguards.
Yes.
Yeah.
And
Or how helpful they ever were, but
ever were. It was so funny because at the actual launching event, because there were parents there, there were educators there, it was everybody there, right? That was one of the questions. I think there was an attorney, I think Keith Howard, he was there, and he asked the questions, but was there any information about the parents, and did they read the procedural handbook? And before, the research students couldn't even say anything. The parents were like, those don't make sense to us. They, and then another thing that I heard was that some of the information that they felt like they needed wasn't actually in that procedural safeguard, especially in the ones in the state of Virginia.
And I'm sure if you quizzed your team on the procedural safeguards, they might not know much more.
Exactly. I probably end up definitely knowing usually more than the people that need to know it, which is
that's right. That's right. Yeah.
and that's a finding that, the idea of, because it is the school makes you feel like, oh, we give you this book. So we give you this book every single time we ask you about this book, we give you the book, we give you the link, that somehow that automatically transfers into parents understanding what's in the book.
Right.
Or understanding how to use the information in the book. Or what about if there's something I need to know that's not in the book? Where do I go?
Right.
So it's not enough just to give parents that. And when I am from this population group and what we talked about, they really need to understand or feel like there's somewhere to go to get additional information about it. So
yeah. I mean, I'd be happy with a 1-page, kind of here are your rights.
Here are your basic rights.
Simple and accessible, and
Yes. Yes. And parent friendly, and directions. If this doesn't work, then go here, some guidance. Because that's another thing that, none of the parents mentioned accessing the parent resource centers. Because how like all the school districts have like those parent resource centers where you're supposed to be able to go and get support, but they're not well utilized, or known of. So another one was pursuing non-school-based professional evaluations and assessments that they, were either told or didn't trust the school district. So they went and did it themselves, didn't even bother going through the school systems because it was difficult, either through rejection or just not getting the responses back. Requesting school-based interventions and services. That's something that a strategy that they used. They kind of talk about in the report a little bit more like how that ended up though, like what happens when you do that. Countering school decisions that felt at odds with the child's well-being. So I loved hearing and continue to love to hear parents trusting their mama gut or their daddy gut, because dad's got it too. I'm just a mom. Sorry, dads out there. I think there's someone from Virginia out there who's like was at this event, and her story is kind of unique from a perspective of, it's to us, of course, it sounds like, oh my gosh, I'm in this field. No, they should not be suspending your fifth grader, your 5-year-old. That makes no sense, or your preschooler. But the mother just like knowing in her heart something was wrong when she was getting these phone calls, and then the student eloping, and then the student being suspended for elopement, and her feeling like this is wrong. What you are doing is against my child's best interest and well-being. And then pursuing getting advocacy supports, and pursuing going to the doctors, and pursuing fighting with the school and saying, you can't suspend my child for elopement because you haven't provided the supports and services he needs.
Right.
So I just wanted to really stress for those that are looking out there, parents, if you feel it, oh my gosh, please trust it. Trust your guts.
Right. Well, and I think too, just knowing that you are a equal part of that team, and your voice is not only important. I mean, it is critical to getting the right support. And I mean, the whole process is not always set up to be easy, right? You're surrounded by 6 people with lots of letters after their name. And, you might think, well, these are the experts, but, there's no greater expert on the child than, the parent, or of course the child. But, it can be tough, and it can be tough to feel, welcome. And of course, I'm sure that, you could probably share stories, but the way that teams respond to, parent advocacy sometimes is really difficult. And I know there can be various factors that are, at play with that as well, in terms of how responsive or dismissive people sometimes are, of parents.
And that's one of the biggest things that I hear from parents, just in my work, away from the research, that, they've experienced school personnel being extremely dismissive of them, ignoring them, gaslighting them terribly.
Well, or if you're passionate, they might say you're aggressive.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. You're aggressive, mean, all that stuff, unprofessional parent. But when they bring in advocates, or they start showing that they know what it is that they're talking about, I notice more of a sense of like, well, how dare you challenge us now? So you go from being everything negative to now, okay, I'm paying attention. I'm learning this. I'm asking questions, because sometimes that's what I'll do. A parent will have a case. I'm like, just use some of this language, right? Because what they're saying is wrong. And once they hear you use language that they don't think you know or have access to about how to make a request for a functional behavioral assessment, and why that's important before you develop a behavioral intervention or a BIP from that perspective. And then it can turn, just using the right language, can turn the advocacy on its heel a little bit. School starts to pay attention, because then they're like, well, wait a minute, who have they been talking to? And then even at that stage of it, I noticed, instead of seeing that as an opportunity to engage the parent and work cooperatively and kind of dig in and kind of work on the right path, they'll get defensive.
Right.
Even though they're wrong. I have a friend that calls them loud and wrong.
Those two things can be true at the same time.
Yes. Holding schools and districts leaders accountable to provide special education services. Often not seeking, seeking information, often used as a last resort. They said was hiring a professional special education advocate, or pursuing some kind of legal means, whether that be a state complaint, an OCR complaint, an Office of Civil Rights complaint. And then some people even went to as far in our research group as disenrolling their children out of the school and opting for homeschooling, and just feeling that would be a better and safer space for their child. Yeah, so that is, where am I? that is some of our initial pieces of findings, and we do have a more kind of a more in-depth piece in looking at some of the statements that the parent made around and I don't have this, I really want to talk about this because I missed this, like, because I was thinking, oh yeah, it's going to be this, it's going to be that, it's going to be this. One of the things that I missed in my thoughts was the expense, and not just from the aspect of cost, the cost of an advocate or the cost of this, but the expense that the parents were experiencing just from having to take so much time off work and having to use either their sick leave or having to use their vacation time just to be able to attend IEP meetings. And oftentimes then going to these IEP meetings and the school still not being prepared, right? Like, waiting 20 minutes for a staff person to be found, or, them not having the right people at the meeting and canceling last minute. Those kind of like staffing or just lack of organization when trying to attend their child's IEP meeting was a huge, huge concern for a lot of the parents, and that surprised me. But now that I think about it, it makes sense. I mean, you're missing work. I've heard of people who've lost their jobs because the school caused them so much to go pick up their child, and they have to go. So
that's a whole other issue, right?
Right.
I mean, I know alive and well in Virginia and across the country, we have a lot of kind of illegal send homes. A lot of kids that are informally, sent home and excluded, and I mean, that's a whole nother problem there, and the impact that can have on a family can be tremendous.
Very, very much so. Very, 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 very much so. So we're just really excited to get the final report out and done. And then from that report, work on developing a very intensive and inclusive training program. Because I feel that if you are an ally of the community that we're serving and that we're talking about, going through this program, learning this training, hearing what the parents are saying they need is important, right? That's like how you kind of start being able to have access to information about a group that's often ignored. Come and learn and hear what they have to say. Come and learn how you can approach your clients that you may work with, or your coworkers that are Black that are raising children with disabilities, to understand what that experience is like. So you can give them grace, give them sympathy, understand, be supportive, learn how to be an ally, realize that there truly is, and some people don't believe it, Guy, but there is racism that exists within our system of public education. I have to remind people, y'all remember, Black people were not allowed to go to school with white folks until a law came into place. Guess what? That's the same thing about our students with disabilities. Had the Black community not fought to get kids into schools integrated, then you would not have had a basis to build on the Park case that they did that in Pennsylvania, or the Mills case that then allowed kids with disabilities to go in school. So as they strip the rights, because they're stripping our rights in special education and civil rights, it is scary what could happen if we allow it to happen.
Well, and I mean, the at issue here, I mean, there is still there's still a tremendous amount of systemic racism in policies, in practices, in dress codes, whatever it may be. There, and people sometimes think, well, those things don't exist anymore, right? We don't have racism in our schools, but you can drill down into the policies and the effect of the policies and the discipline and the disproportionate impact of the discipline. And it's alive and well, regardless of whether or not somebody thinks that the intent may be there or not. It is. And we have to acknowledge that and understand that if we're going to make changes. So this training that you're talking about, this would be training offered through whom? I mean, would this be through you or through something? Okay. And
this would be through Advocating for Kids. It would be our training program. Yeah.
Gotcha. Yeah. And the idea being a training program for Black parents of children with okay, gotcha.
Exactly.
With the hope here, and I don't, may have lots of hopes, because hopes can be tough, but would the hope here be to find like funding that would help you to offer this to more parents and more families and more situations? Is that?
Of
Yeah.
course, several things. Definitely funding opportunities so that parents can come to it at a minimum price,
Mm.
if anything at all.
Yep.
But then, so then that they too can have the skills and take it back into their communities. Like the idea is, if you guys are, enforcing, yes, we're giving you all these great resources, all this information, but please make sure you're not just leaving it in gatekeeping. No gatekeeping here. Please share it in your communities and actually look at providing support for them as needed to give it back into their communities, but also using it for themselves. But the other idea too is Guy, like organizations that work, like if someone has I don't know, group home, or I don't know necessarily a group home would be appropriate, but anybody providing special education advocacy service, I think it would be great for some sped ed teachers. They definitely need it to understand.
Well, yeah, one of the things I was thinking as you were talking about it, I'm like, I mean, this should really be available statewide through the Parent Training Center. Wouldn't that be great, to have something like this available? And of course, there are programs that are available, but what you're talking about here is something that is very specific to, understanding, a perspective and a experience from, it's not just this general, okay, it's all about IEPs. It's, what is different here? What is different for a parent, a Black parent of a Black neurodivergent child, in advocating for their children and understanding what those things are, and feeling seen and heard in what those things are. And, so, I mean, wouldn't it be great if, there were ways to get that kind of more broadly,
disseminated.
across states. Yeah.
Yeah.
I wonder
would love for that.
I wonder if you can talk a little bit more broadly, about kind of what we've talked a little bit about the research, which obviously gives us some insight into what people are experiencing. But, from your perspective, you've been an advocate for many, many years. You have your own, kind of advocacy journey as well. But, for somebody that might say, well, what's different? What's different about, as a Black parent advocating for my Black neurodivergent child? What's different in your experience, and what makes this really something that, requires a different kind of understanding and approach?
Well, I guess to have to answer that question, you have to acknowledge that racism exists within our public schools,
Right.
and that public education was never designed for Black students. In fact, a lot of the policies, procedures, structures actually that are developed in our public schools, especially around discipline, are to remove Black kids out of our schools. We know that. And it's working because the data shows us that forever Black students are being pushed out either through suspensions, expulsions, or just pushed out, forgotten about more than any other group. And then when you add a disability with that, right? Then this is what I mean about that intersection. So just being Black, you're at risk for being in a public school.
Right.
If you got to acknowledge that. Remember when the Clintons said we were super predators? Black kids, I was at that age at that time. I was like, well, how am I super predator? What?
Right. And that's not that far ago, not that long ago in history.
Right? Yeah. And that's how zero tolerance came about. And think about who was hurt the most with that. Zero tolerance. Black students. Black students in general education, and then our disabled students, and then our Black students with disabilities. So because of these kinds of things that we know exist in the system, our Black parents, if they're equipped with, you know what? I have a right to have a manifestation determination. I can prove that you didn't follow the IEP as written. I have evidence that I sent you a doctor's note saying that my child had ADHD, but you failed to evaluate him, but now you want to suspend him. Like all of the things, if you think about it, it's like all of the laws or all of the policies they really kind of put in place to push out Black kids, Black kids with disabilities, their IDA and 504 can kind of protect them because our kids aren't acting out because they're Black. The kids are acting out because they are trying to communicate something. Behavior is communication. So you give them the tools they need to be successful, they're going to do it. And not just say, oh, Black kids are just more loud, or Black kids are just more rude, or, Black parents don't care. Black parents aren't involved. Black parents aren't working with their kids. Oh, the Black father's out of the household. So that's why the Black kids are acting. No. And that's all nonsense that has been sold in education. You know that.
Right.
So we are changing that narrative to none of that is true. Or no, how about that may be true for some folks, but for you to say that's all true about a whole race is your racism and not our reality.
Right.
And our reality is this: when we walk into a room, and it's usually more than 6 folks, guys. When I walk into a room and there's 10 and 12 people.
Well, when you get involved, there's probably about a dozen. So they're like, oh, it's Cheryl. Bring the attorneys, right?
But still, you walk into that room, you're not used to speaking up for yourself, especially to a bunch of white folks, because some of us are still carrying that generational trauma, especially from the South, where you don't challenge white folks. I believe that that's still a kind of an unspoken experience that some Black families have when they're walking into those meetings. And that's why I love walking in there with my mouth wide open, saying whatever I need to say. I mean, I'm modeling, you have a right to speak up against someone that's hurting your child. Let me give you an example. I had a case, guy. Parent is Black female, grandmom, her mother and the grandmother of the student always comes, little Black autistic girl, really spicy. I love me my neural spicy, autistic students. And they were just such a setup. I mean, she was doing everything she could do to get out of that school, eloping, climbing fences. I mean, anything to get out of there. She just hated it, right? So I'm working with her, kind of like changing some things around, trying to get the school to see her differently, not as a problem child, but as she has ADHD, she's selective mutism, she has all of these neurological disorders, and you're expecting her to be able to just respond to you in a way that you want her to respond. She can't. So the mom was working with the social worker, and I think it was one of the other, I think the general education teachers. Now, those 2 teachers happened to be the Black teachers that the 2 Black people that were in the room for the meeting, and then me, I was on Zoom. The white teacher starts crying in the meeting because the mom is talking to the other teacher about how when they met, they made this discussion. So we have to stop the meeting to find out the teacher is crying because she wasn't invited to the meeting. I'm like, talk about white tears destroying, the needs of the Blacks again, right? And I call it white tears from a perspective that there have been so many times in history, look at Emmett Till, when white women have accused Black men of something, or their tears start, they feel like they've been hurt, and then they use that, and then harm is caused to the Black person that has made the white woman cry. That's what it felt like in that meeting, because we were not talking about her child. The only person that should be crying, if they feel like it in a meeting, should be the parent, especially when you're talking about how the child somehow got out of the school, out of the building, was halfway up a fence before security got to her to help her get down off the fence. And she's like in the 3rd grade. That's dangerous.
Right.
That's what she should be crying about. Not the fact that the Black mother and the Black teacher had a meeting without her. Why didn't she come to the meeting? But those are the kinds of actions that are happening today in our IEP meetings. And it's disgusting. Or I had a Black father who was, in a meeting. He was Zoom, so it's not even like they could say he was physically aggressive. He wasn't even in the same meeting with them. And he was very concerned, talking about his son, reading on kindergarten to pre-K level, being in the 4th grade. And him like saying, we need to fix this. We need these services. We need these kinds of things. And then them accusing him of being aggressive. And I'm like, well, I think he's upset and not aggressive. How would you feel if your 4th grader reading level score started at pre-K?
Right.
It's almost like they fail the child and then blame the parent for being upset, concerned, wary, advocating about the harm that has happened.
Right.
It makes no sense to me.
Yeah.
So Guy, I don't think there's anything that I can say really to your question. Some people will just not get it. That, right? Right. There's some people that will just be like, no, we're all different. I don't know. We all have disabilities. And that's another reason I think why, I don't see color. Well,
you hit it. I live in Maryland, which is generally a fairly blue state, pretty I think in terms of but I live in a redder part of the the blue state, and we have a
Mhm.
school board that recently flipped, and those are the things you're hearing. You're hearing things about being colorblind. You're hearing things about they actually got rid of a statement that was put in effect by the previous school board about acknowledging the impacts of racism, and then they decided, oh, well, we're going to get rid of that because to us we don't see this.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, and yeah, it's incredible the things that are happening, even just kind of around the nation right now, that and the
Mhm.
impact that they can have. But, thinking back to, you're going to work on this training. And of course, when your research comes out, we've already talked about, I want to have you back and I want to have you
Yeah.
talk about that
And
and
bring
share
the
with us.
team. I want the students to come. Can they come on?
Absolutely,
Oh,
absolutely.
they'll love
We'd
it.
love to have them. Love to
Okay,
have them.
good.
And if any of them want to write anything, even just about what they did, we'd love to
Okay.
publish an article about it as
Oh,
well.
love
So I
it.
mean,
Okay,
yeah, the door is always wide open here
great.
for sharing. But I want to kind of get back to that training will be a fantastic opportunity. But thinking about what you do today in advocating and working with families, we've talked about some of the challenges that you see. What's some of the advice? So what's some of the advice out there? So if you think about our community is a lot of kids that have experienced restraint, seclusion, suspension, expulsion, corporal punishment. We have a lot of families. So thinking about the parent of a Black neurodivergent child that's being physically restrained or having something done to them, what's some of the advice that you give to families that you've been supporting?
Oof. Oh my goodness.
And I know it's situational, but just
It's situation and it's a
yeah.
big question in it. But one of the things that I will definitely say that I do here in this area, and because you actually referred that case of the student that
Mm,
kind of died, is getting kids out of educational settings like that to the best of my ability.
right.
Um, and that do the kind of physical restraints on kids because there's absolutely no proof that that works. The seclusion rooms are disgusting. They're and we, as Dr. Bell talks about in his new book, that he calls them, what is it, confinement, solitary confinement, because
Right.
that's basically what it is, but
Right.
it's in a school building, in a school situation. I think parents need to immediately sign or get a doctor to support not putting your child in seclusion. Instead, identify through. And I know you're you're into behavioralism, but unfortunately, our schools are catching up. So I like to pair, if you can, a school psychologist with somebody that does behaviors in developing programming that trains teachers, because one of the big things I see are teachers not understanding how their power dynamic and that power struggle that they get into with a student
Mhm.
over something that can be extremely small, then ends up into something so big that now the child has a charge, or the room's
Oh
been
yeah.
torn
Yeah.
up, or somebody's
Yeah.
been hurt. Parents, you can request that. You can request, I want all of my child's teachers trained by a specialist on how to manage behaviors, how to not and get involved in power struggles.
Mhm.
If you can, for suspensions, a big one, if your child has an IEP, your child has a 504, and they can be suspended up to 10 days. That is what the law says. But my thing is, if your child is engaging in behaviors and the school wants to suspend your child, immediately schedule an IEP meeting, document what happened, what led up to the suspension. Don't wait for the 10 days. If the 10 days come up, it's too late. We want to get that immediately. So
Mm.
even if it's one suspension, one write-up, one phone call telling you to come pick your child up, you immediately ask for an IEP meeting to revise the IEP, to add additional supports and services to address the behavior that led you to call me to come pick him up,
Right.
or that
Right.
led to him being removed from the educational environment,
Right.
because I want to prevent this immediately. So
Right.
I think immediate action is one of the biggest ones.
Yeah, no,
And then
I love that because you're pushing back a proactive narrative to the school, like, well,
yes,
let's
yes,
be curious about this for a second. What could we have done to prevent that? Because that's what we need to
yep,
do now, right?
yes,
Yeah,
exactly.
love it, love it.
Exactly. And at the IEP meeting in writing, right?
Hmm.
This is what occurred. These are some of the things that we need to do to fix that. Because what'll happen if the child engages in that same behavior, you continue to have evidence to show, hey, this is a pattern of behavior. This is the third time you've done that. You've called me for this. we need additional supports. We might need some related services. Do we need counseling? Do we need a one-on-one? Do we need more breaks? Do we need to bring in a specialist? I mean, start even pushing in more supports,
right.
Because again, they're communicating with us with what they need.
Right.
One of the other things I think, Guy, that I think are important, that if the child if you have documentation, let me give you an example. I'll tell you what it is. The child is engaging in a behavior that is related to the child's disability, and it's even documented on the IEP that this is the child's disability. You might even have an IEP goal for that. They can still suspend your child. But in those kinds of situations, I definitely appeal to the principal immediately. Because if my child's eloping, you're telling me I got to wait 65 days to evaluate before you're going to provide additional services. My child then elopes. You're in the process of actually evaluating my child, and you're still calling me, my child elopes one more time. You want to suspend my child. You want to kick my child, give him an out-of-school suspension for behaviors that we are investigating that could be part of a disability. You appeal that because that's disability discrimination. That's what that is. This child is not coping. There's something that is causing this elopement. Instead of saying, oh, well, we do have some services in place. Let's go revise the IEP, put some things in place until we're finished with that. But you can't just keep suspending the child, kicking the child out. So that's an example of when I think you need to appeal. Even if your child has an IEP, they can suspend. But if it's behaviors that are associated to their disability, appeal it in writing to their principal, and then show this is what his IEP says. This is what we know the child does. Why are you suspending him for this? That means you're saying this IEP is not providing FAPE. Back on the school. Right.
Yeah. I mean, you can look at a restraint or a seclusion or a suspension, whatever it may be. And what is below the surface is a child whose needs have not been appropriately met.
Exactly.
So let's have a conversation about how do we appropriately meet this child's needs? Because if we were, we wouldn't find ourselves with a child eloping or a child having, absolutely.
And I encourage parents, if you're at an IEP team meeting, you ask, do you all use restraints and seclusion? Under what circumstances? And then put in there as an accommodation, I do not give you permission to restrain and seclude my child at any point.
Yeah. We have a no consent letter that was written by an attorney that we've worked with before, but and of course they can still do it even if it's in no consent. But the real thing I'm listening for in that conversation though is when they say when they might restrain and seclude, are they actually following what the law says? Because in so many cases, staff are not really aware of what the law says, and they have a idea in their mind that it's a lower standard than what the law often says, which is why we see a lot more restraint and seclusion happening, in so many cases.
Yes.
So I want to hit on something here. You've mentioned kind of briefly Dr. Charles Bell a couple of times, and we were talking about this as we were coming on today. That he has a new book coming out, and we've both been fortunate enough to kind of get an early look. And I wonder if you would just tell people a little bit about Dr. Bell, and I can even read the intro or a little blurb about the book if you'd like.
Okay.
And
I'll just tell you the name of the new book, and then how I kind of came in contact with him and know him. So the name of the new book is No Restraints: Disabled Children and Institutionalized Violence in America's Schools. I love that title because that's exactly what it is. It is institutionalized, approved violence and trauma for our children. Dr. Bell is a researcher. He's also a professor at Illinois. We realized I was saying Ohio, but it's Illinois State, correct? Is that what?
Yes. Mm-hmm.
I ran into him with his first book. No, I ran into him because I saw that he had posted that he was looking to interview Black male students who were diagnosed with behavioral disabilities and had been suspended multiple times, I think, out of school. And I just thought that was so fascinating. I'm like, oh, I know so many. So I actually reached out to him and, sent some of my clients that way. He wrote a book, read his book. His book was amazing. Had an opportunity to interview him. And one of the things that I really appreciate is that he gets it. Like he's going into this thinking of, from my feel and sense of him was just about like discipline and pushing out. And now that he got involved in it, he's like, this is some mess going on. I didn't know this was happening. And that's kind of what I'm excited about his work now, because now that he gets it, he's definitely doing the work around it to expose it. Would you agree?
Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah, we had him on the podcast previously, and we'll no doubt have him back when the book comes out. I'm going to read a little blurb about the book. It says over 100,000 students are restrained and secluded in locked rooms throughout the U.S. public schools. The overwhelming majority of students are students with disabilities. Despite pleas from parents, disability rights organizations, and at least 17 states' attorney generals, Congress has refused to pass laws to protect these students from the horrors of harmful restraint and seclusion practices. In No Restraint, Charles Bell argues that seclusion and restraint are so harmful and traumatic that they provoke night terrors, a profound aversion to school, self-harm in children. Students report it being subjected to aggressive restraint tactics that left bruises on their arms, their legs, dragged into seclusion rooms that resemble solitary confinement cells in prisons, and locked inside. The book has a lot of interviews across 15 states with parents of Black and white children with disabilities, as well as university teacher education program directors, and really kind of explores, kind of this issue and what's happening. I'm really excited. I know it's coming out from my understanding, the beginning of the year, next year, right?
Yeah.
So definitely something we'll feature here. And I know you've been connected with him for quite some time, and I don't even remember the sequence, if that's how I got connected with him or not, but
probably. I think I reached out. I was like, "You got to meet Guy."
So really excited about his work, because it certainly is related to the things that you and I care about deeply here when it comes to a lot of the things that are happening. And again, we know what the data says. Yes, children with disabilities, Black children with disabilities, kind of at the top of the list here when we look at children that are more likely to be restrained, secluded, suspended, expelled, subjected to corporal punishment.
All that stuff, all school push out, all of it is a form of pushing out. And I have to admit, in reading through the book, the stories, I don't know if people really understand the emotional toll it takes on the whole family when a child has been traumatized by being restrained. It's not like you let them out the room finally and you clean up whatever blood they have happened to them because you put them in a room unsupervised and then you just send them home and there's nothing there. No, there's tons of trauma that child is carrying.
Absolutely.
And then if you don't inform the parent of what's happening and the child comes home and they're having these meltdowns, you as an adult, as a family, you don't even have the tools or the skills to start to heal the child.
Right.
It's disgusting. I still don't understand it. I don't understand why it's allowed to happen.
It's traumatic for the kids. It's traumatic for their families.
Yes.
It's actually traumatic for the teachers and staff and other kids that witness this happening.
Yes.
It is, and again, I mean, we feel very strongly that seclusion should never even be considered. It's never okay to put a kid in a room against their will and not let them out. And I would say any kind of restraint or hold should be exceedingly rare. I mean, yes, in a situation where a child is going to dart in front of a moving car, yes, I would expect you to put your arms around that child and prevent that from happening. But all too often, these things begin with a power struggle. They begin with a demand that the child's unable to meet in the moment. They begin with, and they're built on a foundation of trauma, of things related to disability, and kids that are misunderstood and not supported in ways that are appropriate.
And punishment, right? Control and punishment too.
Absolutely. So much of it is absolutely avoidable. So tell us about what other things you're working on lately, because I know you just had an event recently, and I know you always have a lot of things going on. So tell me about some of the things you got going on.
Well, we are real excited about launching a community and advocating for kids community called we're calling the Culture Advocacy Collection. And it's going to be just an online platform where parents can go and join in it and have access to, templates about how to request a IEP meeting, some of your just basic laws. There's always at the end a cultural tip. So it's like, I'm giving you a reference. Look, this is something that if you're a Black parent, you're going to struggle with. Keep in mind, do A, B, C, D. It's very specific so that when that Black parent reads this, as a Black mom or even as a Black advocate, there are certain things that I know I'm going to see on a Black child's IEP, language
Mhm.
wise, or a teacher's going to say something very off key often. And so I just kind of put some of those pieces in there to help parents know that this is how we respond to that. We don't have to stay with the gaslighting. So the idea is to give template and resources along with some training and then build
You mean things that are actually
community.
more easily digested than, say, the
Yes.
procedural?
Yeah, way better
Okay,
and
okay, well, that's good.
culturally
Sure.
relevant.
Yep, yep.
Look, hey, look,
Right,
our kids get suspended more than anybody else's. This is
right.
why you need to attend this manifestation. This is how you need to
Gotcha.
prepare
Mhm,
for it. This,
mhm.
these are tools you need to know. This is an important meeting. This isn't something you should miss, and this is why. So, yeah, definitely, definitely. It talks about your rights, but
Yep.
it gives you an actual resource that you can print out,
Nice.
fill in your child's information, and send it to the school to make a request.
Gotcha, gotcha.
So that's real exciting. And then we are going to be, oh my gosh, we have so many presentations for the final report when it comes out next
Mhm.
year. We're going to be submitting a application to the Hampton Road Social Justice Conference that's held in April to present our results. It's kind of cool because we did it 2 years ago, telling people about, oh, we're going to do this research. So now we'll be able to say, hey, we did the research and this is what
Mm.
the finding is. I'll be presenting at the Autism in Black conference in April, that Saturday morning. What else? There's just, I filed a systemic complaint against Portsmouth Public Schools. So if
And
anybody
that's not your first by any means. You filed a complaint or two over your,
yeah, I know.
yeah, yeah,
They really, and I hadn't done one in a while, but
yeah.
I was disgusted with some of the
Mm.
stuff that I was seeing in those meetings. I mean, like, how about things like this? Imagine going to an IEP meeting to discuss your child's reading needs. Again, your child is in the fourth grade reading on pre-K, and they send the math teacher in as your general education teacher to discuss reading needs.
Mhm.
Now, how wrong is that? Like, how does that make sense? Like, I mean, just simple stuff like that. You can't develop the IEP if you don't even know what the general education teacher is doing with the reading instruction for the student to even understand where they're at. It
Right.
just stupid stuff like that.
Mhm.
So I'm hoping the state. I filed it. The state has not picked it up yet. Hopefully they will. Once they do, I'll make sure I let you know, because that'll be exciting. Because I like the idea of, if I'm seeing patterns of violations, if there's a way, and the school district isn't working with me at all, like Virginia Beach, I could go to the director there. Hey, this is what's going on. What can we do? Chesapeake, same thing now. You have these kinds of relationships.
Yep,
I like
yep,
having those
yep.
relationships. But Portsmouth is its own little crazy beast out
Yeah,
there.
yeah, yeah.
And other peer, I mean, and I needed to be able to do something to help all those other families in this city who don't have access to me.
Gotcha. Right, right, right,
You
right.
know?
Yeah. Well, and I love the point you were making there, because, this is hard work, and sometimes it's work that, is difficult for people on all sides of it, right?
Yes.
But ultimately, even with holding schools accountable, you can develop positive relationships and begin working together more, and
Yeah.
that improves outcomes for everybody involved. So, I mean, I think it's really
Exactly.
important. So
Exactly.
I want to just mention, anybody that's watching live, if you have a question or comment, feel free to put it in the chat. We're going to be winding down here in a few minutes.
Ooh,
I just
yeah.
realized how much time has elapsed already. So, but if you have any
Okay.
questions or comments, feel free to put those in the chat. I did see a comment here from Stacy. I was just going to
Oh,
read out. I'm
who's
so
that?
glad that I was here, here to hear this, the live. I have to go to work with a student, but thank you so much for all the work you do, Cheryl.
Thank
I
you.
could have a conversation with you about how it feels for our Black families to walk into a room with all these white people telling them
Yep.
their children cannot do something. It's extremely uncomfortable and somewhat disrespectful.
Yes, it
Thank you,
is.
Stacy, for that. I'm sure
Thank
you'll
you,
you'll
Stacey.
you'll watch the recording if you had to drop off
Mhm.
for a session. But others, if you have questions or comments, feel free to go ahead and put those in the chat as well.
Yes, it's about
So
giving our babies tools. Okay, I just saw the one about, yeah, yes, it's about giving our babies tools. That's
right, right,
definitely
yep,
important.
yep, yep,
Yeah.
yep.
Yes, yes, yes.
So I'm going to ask you a question, and
Yes.
realizing that we're towards the end of our time, we could
Okay.
probably talk for quite a while about this. But I have a lot of concerns, of course, about changes that have been made at the federal level, the Department of Education, what's
Yeah.
happened to the Office of Civil Rights, what's
Mm.
happened to the Department of Justice. These things are certainly going to have some impacts. I'm just kind of curious. Um, any thoughts that you have? I mean, again, I look at things like the Office of Civil Rights, and I know that even going back a year ago or 2 years ago, uh, it wasn't always doing what it needed to for families. But
I agree.
the concern around losing more of those protections concerns me a lot for the population that we're talking about, the population that are restrained and secluded and suspended and expelled and have all these things done to them. So any kind of immediate thoughts on that?
It's scary.
Yeah.
It really is. He's taken away a huge protection for students with disabilities.
Right.
He's pretty much um, sending out a message to school districts. You could pretty much do whatever you want
Right.
because we're not going to be investigating this,
Right.
and or at least not. I mean, I don't know. I'm of two. I'm hearing a lot of the national organizations. I participated in a town hall with all the big national organizations about this, and one of the discussions and one of the things that they're saying is that you still go ahead and file. Like, you go ahead and you push and you still file, because then you show that there's a need for it. But
Right.
for me, the concern with me for telling parents that is,
Right.
why put that much energy into writing something that's never going to be reviewed or might not be reviewed for 3 years when it
Right.
comes to OCR? I think
Right.
at this point, your best bet, and I'm doing it myself instead of using OCR, is pushing it to the state level,
Yeah.
holding our states responsible as much as we possibly can.
Mm. Mhm.
Um,
Mhm.
I
Mhm.
I think we're going to see a lot of lawsuits, and there already
Yeah.
are quite a few lawsuits out against him about his actions around special ed. I think another one will come out when he does move IDEA under Health and
Mm.
Human Services, which is really, really interesting because how many times have you been in an IEP and they say, oh, that's a medical diagnosis. We don't do anything with medicine or medical. Well,
Mm.
guess what now? IDEA is going to be under Health and Human
Mhm.
Services. So is that
Mhm.
going to change? Is that language you're going to stop using in the meetings? My biggest fear is the funding. I think he's going to try some certain districts or states first where he's going to only dispense block grants to fund IDEA. And we know that that doesn't come with oversight or requirements to
Mm.
implement
Mm.
IDEA.
Mhm. Mhm.
I think that we need to be prepared to fight because I think he wants to dismantle IDEA. I really, really do.
Mm. Mm. Mm.
And I think that we just need to be prepared to write our Congress, right?
Yep.
Right, right,
Yep.
right.
Yep.
We as
Do
a
do not
community,
go silently. I mean,
yeah,
it's
we
yeah, make
cannot
your
just
voices
do
heard.
that.
Yeah, and I
Yeah.
appreciate what you were saying too about,
Yes.
putting effort at the state level and even in times that have been different from the times we're in now.
Mhm.
I've always tried to be very realistic with families and tell them like, well, here's what might happen if you file a state complaint. Here's what might happen through OCR. Here's what might happen to DOJ. But the truth is sometimes there's many levers, and it's a matter of continuing to be persistent and pulling on levers and doing anything you can. But the
Yeah,
first and foremost priority is advocating for your kid to get what they need in this moment.
exactly.
Because that's we can come back to all the other things that need to happen, but in the moment, getting your child the support that they need, that they're not having these negative things happen to them is what's really, really critical. And I know, you're always doing so much. And whenever I talk to you, I know you've got a lot on your plate. But of course, you do
Yeah.
advocating,
Yeah.
and I know you've worked with families across the country. If
Mhm.
people were interested in talking to you, if somebody is interested in
Yes.
hiring you as an advocate, where would
Yes.
they find out more about you and how to get in touch with you?
They can go to our website. Our website has a lot of good information. There is actually, yeah, there you go, right there. You can go to our website, and on our first page, you can sign up for a free 15-minute consultation. It's really with me, it's not an AI. um, and that's where we kind of talk about where you are on your case. Are you in need of an advocate? Or is there just some suggestions that I can give you? Do you want to sign up for coaching? So that's one aspect. There's also, because I do a lot of free like trainings. And I did one last month called "You Are Your Child's Best Advocate." That was a 2.5-hour training of where I just went through and really trying to explain the laws, IDA, ADA, and 504 in as simplest small chunks as possible. And that's available on demand at our website. You would get the full 2-hour webinar along with some of the free resources and templates that we developed for that.
Oh, that's
and
fantastic.
Then also, if you go to our website, you'll find out information about our culture of advocacy, when that's going to open up. And of course, that's where we'll be putting our Advocating While Black, the final report findings. So check out our website, sign up for our newsletters or to be contacted when we do things. And then that way you can stay aware of some of the cool stuff that's been happening.
You know, it's interesting. You mentioned a moment ago AI, and you know, we're talking here about, you know, racism. We're talking about a lot of things. I don't know if you saw the story that young Black student who recently was handcuffed and because he was holding a Doritos bag that apparently the AI software thought was a gun. And you know, I mean, I read a story and it was talking about how, you know, even these software systems can yeah. So these are interesting times.
It is. And Guy, can I just the
sure.
thing about that, whoever developed it, had they had an extra lens of somebody that wasn't just white, it could be avoided. Right?
You mean if we bring diversity, equity, inclusion into the things that we're doing, we bring in broader perspectives and lived experiences, and we can make things that better serve all people? I mean, is that what you're saying? Well, that's an amazing point to leave on. I'm going to ask you, you have any final words you want to leave us with? I know we've talked about some things that are tough here. Anything positive, you know, that you want to leave us with, or any final words you want to leave us with as we wrap up here today?
I think that for me, though these times are challenging, they're also exciting because we're a part of history being made. You know, when we're gone, people are going to be talking about, wow, remember when, right? So I kind of look at it from that aspect, and to be able to be a part of that in a way that's positive or in a way that's helping families and community. That's exciting. I know there's a lot of negative stuff.
You're gonna have to keep selling me on that. I'm thinking I'm part of this history that, you know, I'm not.
Yeah, you are. You are. Yeah, we're going to be a part of this history. We are.
Well, and it's a really good time to continue making good trouble, right? So let's end it there. So I want to thank you for joining us today. It's always a pleasure to talk to you, and I really appreciate you sharing your work and your experience. We'll definitely have you back on when the research is out. We'll plan to have Dr. Bell on as well to talk about his new book when that's out. So excited about that. But thank you so much for being here and for all the work you're doing, and even for leaving me with a little bit of inspiration, even though I'm, you know, still struggling a little bit here. I appreciate it. And for everyone else, we will see you again. I think we're back again in 2 weeks. So look for us then. Cheryl, if you'll stick around, we'll just say goodbye to everybody here, and we'll see you next time. Bye-bye.